Good evening, everybody. As you see, this evening we're going to be looking at business in Abchurch Lane, London. We're going to be looking across 310 years of history, at postal history and related matters in this very narrow lane that's in the City of London. Those early maps give you an idea as to where we're talking about, and I'll look at this in more detail with you as we go through. As explained by John Locke in the London Street Directory in 1810, Abchurch Lane runs from Lombard Street, specifically at the corner with number 18 Lombard Street, which historically was between the General Post Office and the Phoenix Fire Office, and it leads down to what was number 67 Cannon Street. Conveniently, in a guide published in 1818, it told us that the length of the lane is 181 yards with 36 houses. So it's just over a tenth of a mile long. And working on information in one of the fire insurance plans that were produced for the area, I found that Abchurch Lane was stated as being 16 feet wide. So it's very narrow and not that long. And this detailed plan shows where it is. So that's where we're going to be looking at this evening. Abchurch Lane was named after St Mary Abchurch, which is situated near the south end of the lane on the western side. And we think that the name is perhaps a corruption of Upchurch, as the church is on a slightly rising ground. It was first mentioned as Abchurch Lane in 1291, and other forms of the name were Abchurch Lane in 1313, and Lane of St Mary de Abchurch was recorded in 1346 and 1347. The earliest record of the name actually as Abchurch Lane is in something that was written in 1557. By 1688, Edward Lloyd, from whom the great commercial corporation known as Lloyd's derives its name, was the keeper of a coffee house in Tower Street. And in 1691, he moved to premises at 16 Lombard Street, so at the corner of Abchurch Lane, where Lloyd's Coffee House became the recognized center of shipbroking and marine insurance business. And so there's one of those blue plaques there for the site of Lloyd's Coffee House is at that location. Now, over the centuries, the lane was the place to go to eat. Early in the 17th century, its principal attraction was the cakes sold by Mother Walls from her shop there. Not only was this mentioned in John Webster's Northwood Hoe in 1607, but in a play written in 1598 by William Horton called Englishman for My Money, when a Frenchman Delion was asking a clown Frisco what he could smell, he explained that he had the scent of London stone as full in his nose as Abchurch Lane of Mother Walls pasties. So clearly this cake and pasty shop was very important in that lane and filled the air with the aroma of the cooking that was taking place there. Now, in the period 1649 through to 1666, it's known that there were 5 public houses in Abchurch Lane, so it was a place to go and eat and to drink. And there's an illustration there of a brass halfpenny token that was issued by Ralph Lucas of the White Bear Tavern in Abchurch Lane in 1665. He's recorded in the lane side part of Abchurch Lane in the 1666 hearth tax returns, because his property had 5 hearths, and that map shows the location on the eastern side of Abchurch Lane where the White Bear Tavern was located. Now, of course, unfortunately, that tavern was destroyed in the Great Fire of London. And in 1666, a new tavern opened there called Pontac's Head. And this was no ordinary tavern. It had a fashionable place in London society, and all the fashionable people and all the important people came to eat and drink there. So Christopher Wren, John Locke, Daniel Defoe, Jonathan Swift, they all came to eat and drink there. You could also buy a cure for worms in Abchurch Lane, because Abchurch Lane, there was an apothecary at the Pestle and Mortar, John Moore, and his cure for worms and ointments, these were very famous. They were advertised throughout the country. There's an advert there in the upper left corner. Look for the Derby Mercury from January 1734. And indeed, there were reports in various publications about the efficacy of the treatments that people were buying from John Moore. Notes there from 1722, 1710, etc. But Alexander Pope decided in his satirical poem to write a 10-verse poem about John Moore. And verse 9 was, O learned friend of Abchurch Lane, who settest our entrails free, vain is thy art, thy powder vain, since worms will eat even thee. Well, I'm not sure that the worms ate him, but of course, eventually John Moore passed away. He died in 1737. Dr. Alexander Tweedy wrote case books about cases of cholera, and he was at 3 Abchurch Lane, and he was writing about this in 1832, and he referred to the City Hospital in Abchurch Lane. Now, this is where the Lord Mayor of London had made available in his mansion in Abchurch Lane. He'd made it ready for use for upwards of 50 cholera patients to be at the disposal of the Board of Health. So we can see how Abchurch Lane was important here for medical things as well as for food. And I mentioned about the various inns, and of course the fact that very little paper has survived from then, but we do have some tokens that have survived. So at the Black Horse Inn in Abchurch Lane, that one on the left, one's in the middle there from John Millett from 1664, and a farthing from Thomas Chubb of Abchurch Lane in 1649. But here is the first item of postal history we're going to look at this evening. Quite an early letter, posted in 1714 from Jersey to Matthew de Saumarez, who I believe was a Guernseyman. He was a merchant, and his mail was sent to him at the Cock and Lion in Abchurch Lane. And he would obviously go there and inquire if any mail had arrived for him. And this was before the establishment of the official mail service from Jersey, because that was later in 1794. So this would have been carried privately to an English port, for which there was a charge of a penny paid to the vessel's captain. And once it arrived in England, the letter would have entered the general post. There's a manuscript 4p charge for more than 80 miles. The 4p is just to the right of the word London. So I was keen to know where this Cock and Lion was. So I did find the information about the extent of the parish of St Mary Abchurch. The location of the Cock and Lion was given as being on the west side towards the northern end of Abchurch Lane. So I've marked where that is on that map there with a red arrow indicating where the Cock and Lion was situated. Mentioned about various inns, and we looked at some tokens a few moments ago. Here's another one, tokens from the Lamb Inn, Abchurch Lane. And this is relevant in this context because in 1740, there was news of 2 parcels of letters that had been taken out of the Bristol Mail on Wednesday, the 30th of March of 1740, one of which was found in Boot Alley, which is across from the Lamb. And there was also another one found by a servant belonging to the Lamb Alehouse in Abchurch Lane. There's the account there that was published in the London Evening Post. So the point was, the post office wasn't that far away, as we can see on the map. The Lamb Inn was obviously in Lamb Alley and Lamb Court, but somebody had stolen some of the mail and had opened it all and had discarded the opened mail not too far from the post office there, just off of Abchurch Lane. because as I said, the General Post Office was in Lombard Street and Abchurch Lane. The diagram of the right corner shows that, and there's a rather nice illustration there of the General Post Office that was established in Lombard Street and extended into Abchurch Lane. It was there from 1678 until 1829, because in 1829 the new headquarters opened in St. Martin-le-Grand. At that location, they provided the three services: the Inland Office, the Foreign Office, and the Tupney Post Office, each obviously with separate staff. So because it was the General Post Office headquarters, pretty obviously everything was there. And of course, the proximity and the expansion of the post office to Abchurch Lane had some effect on the lane as the post office developed and was enlarged in that area. And so we can see reports that were in the papers in June 1763 about some of the inhabitants of Abchurch Lane have had notice to quit their houses, which were to be pulled down in order to enlarge the avenues to the post office. And a report in 1764 that all the houses on the west side of Abchurch Lane were to be purchased in order to build a new General Post Office. I think that was a slight exaggeration, but still, that's what the report said. Because in 1765, 4 houses in Abchurch Lane were taken for the post service. And indeed, there were entrances to the GPO from an entrance passage from Lombard Street, another was from Sherborne Lane, and a third from Abchurch Lane. And actually, somebody rather important to the post office who lived in Abchurch Lane was Francis Freeling. He had a house in Abchurch Lane, and in 1797, he was appointed as joint secretary to the General Post Office. So here's a nice early mail as well. This is 1779. This was sent from Bridlington Quay to Samuel West at 20 Abchurch Lane. And the map shows you where 20 Abchurch Lane was. That's at the southern end of the lane. It was carried the 206 miles from Bridlington via Hull and Howden to Doncaster and then onto the Great North Road and southwards to London. So it was posted in Bridlington Quay on the 6th of August and arrived in London on the 9th of August. And the manuscript 4 shows the amount to be paid as the rate was 4p for over 150 miles. And the letter was from Elizabeth West. She was the daughter of Samuel West, and he was a merchant at 20 Abchurch Lane. I found a couple of illustrations that help us understand what the buildings were like in Abchurch Lane. These two obviously showing St. Mary Abchurch, which was rebuilt following the Great Fire of London, in 1666. And you can see on those two illustrations, they show buildings adjacent to the church. One on the left showing us the buildings that were on the east side of the lane, numbers 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23 Abchurch Lane. And the illustration on the right shows us the properties that were beside the church, numbers 17, 16, and 15 are visible in that picture. We can also see how, when we look at these historic images, we can see how the style of the buildings changed over the years, as is inevitable, obviously in the city, changes taking place, buildings being modified. So here's an item of mail going to 30 Abchurch Lane. This was actually from somebody who was aboard a ship. Liz Tudor was on the ship Vansittart when it was just off the Isle of Wight on the 15th of January, 1815. And she was writing to a member of her family, Mary Key, who was the wife of Henry Garrett Key. Now, Henry was a stationer, and what Liz Tudor did was she marked her cabin number and her surname on the letter and handed it over to be carried from the ship by the pilot boat to take it back to Portsmouth. It therefore has a ship letter mark on it dated 16th of January and a single ring receiving mark dated 17th of January. Now, the single letter rate was 8p for the distance of between 50 and 80 miles, and Portsmouth was 72 miles from London. So we can see a nice big manuscript 8 on there. As I say, Henry was a stationer. He had married Mary Tudor in Sheffield, and he was the younger brother of John Henry Key, and the two of them, so the Key brothers, were stationers at 30 Abchurch Lane. They had quite a bit of stock, utensils and things, because they valued all of that for insurance purposes at £10,000 in 1820. Now, Mrs. Tudor was aboard the Honourable Company's ship Vansittart at the start of her voyage to Bombay, because the ship arrived on the 27th of May, calling in en route to Madeira and the Cape of Good Hope. And I'd like to acknowledge Mark Oxley, who's on the call this evening, because this letter belongs to him. He very kindly let me have a nice scan of it, and Mark and I have researched what it's all about. So thank you for that, Mark. It's interesting to know, actually, that the Key brothers had their stationery business at 30 Abchurch Lane, because by the 1760s, 30 Abchurch Lane was a brick-built property, and that was occupied by wholesale stationers Wright and Gill. Now, brick built was important after the Great Fire of London because, of course, you wouldn't want your building to go up in smoke with all that paper. Paper was very expensive, and so the property insurance was high. And in 1770, Wright and Gill insured their stock and utensils for £6,200. On the left, you can see this rather nice receipt for some stuff that was bought from Wright and Gill stationers in Abchurch Lane, August the 2nd, 1763. Somebody bought 6 shillings worth of paper from them. And Wright and Gill were actually related by marriage, and they were important people actually in the City of London. They were aldermen, but and indeed they were also elected to be sheriffs, but they both served as Lord Mayor in 1785, and then William Gill was Lord Mayor in 1788. So these stationers were important in the City of London. And the Company of White Papermakers had their warehouse in Abchurch Lane in the 1690s. So, you know, Abchurch Lane had a long association with paper and stationery. We can see an announcement here of a paper auction by the company in November 1691, and an item from the London Gazette from August 1694, again about a series of sales of paper, of several sorts of writing and printing paper. I mentioned, of course, the fact that the post office was there at the northern end of Abchurch Lane. At number 4 Abchurch Lane, that's where the ship letter office was. The Ship Letter Act of 1799 gave the post office power to use private ships for the conveyance of letters at half the usual packet rates. And so a ship letter office was set up at the London chief office and was there until 1847. Over on the right there, you see I've got some examples to show the different types of hand stamp that we use on these ship letters in London. And there's an example there of one from 1812, where a letter had come by ship from Bengal into London to go to somebody at Soho Square. But as I said, the ship letter office was only at 4 Abchurch Lane until 1847, which is when that office then closed. Here's an item of mail then from 4 Abchurch Lane from 1860. Looking at the Post Office London Directory from 1862, we can see that there were a number of businesses established in that northern part of Abchurch Lane, one of which was Jonathan Brandon and Company, who are merchants. And this item of mail is from them to some consignees, F.M. Brandon and Company, who are in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It was put on the ship, the Tyne, which sailed from Southampton on the 9th of May, 1860. And that ship was carrying Her Majesty's mail for Lisbon, St. Vincent, Bahia, Pernambuco, Rio de Janeiro, Buenos Aires, and the Falklands. And it not only had mail, but it also had 118 passengers on board. They were also carrying £50,000 worth of money for the Bank of Brazil in Rio. Substantial amounts of gold coins, £19,300 worth of gold coins, £17,000 worth of bar silver, and £16,500 worth of jewellery, as well as a full cargo of general merchandise. And it worked its way gradually across the Atlantic. It called into Lisbon, was there on the 13th of May. It got across to St. Vincent and left there on the 21st of May and arrived at Rio de Janeiro on the 2nd of June. And on the back, there's an annotation 4p, which was all about the postage rate. And we can see that it was stamped by 4 1-shilling stamps that were all cancelled, obviously, in London. Now, we know that there were merchants. We also know that the City of London is very important for banking and finance. And here at 32 Abchurch Lane, a bank company was established there. The company had originated about 1813 in Threadneedle Street, but it moved in 1815 to 32 Abchurch Lane. This bank was operated by Thomas and Stephen Nicholson and Joseph Jansen. Now, Thomas and Stephen were half brothers, and when Thomas Nicholson died, the bankers dissolved their partnership on the 31st December 1823. And you can see the checks there in the upper part of the page. Rather nice with the 32 Abchurch Lane on there, and those date from prior to December 1823. Following the dissolving of that partnership, then William Williams Brown and Joseph Jansen formed another banking company at the same address called Messrs. Brown, Jansen and Co. And of course, they had checks produced as well. There's one there from February 1824. So they were amongst the earliest of the bankers that were in Abchurch Lane. They had their checks printed by Rowe and Company for many decades. So we've got checks here, look, from 1869, 1870, and so on, 1872. And you notice how the style changed over the years. Yeah, but all of them say 32 Abchurch Lane. So that they were bankers there for quite some time. Here's a wrapper that was registered from Liverpool to them on the 20th of December, 1873, which arrived in London on the 22nd of December. And as we see, the stamps were obviously cancelled with the 466 barred overall obliterator. Interesting also in around the same sort of time frame, 30th October 1878, the Whitaker's Almanac was using reproductions of Mulready envelopes, and this one was addressed to Messrs. Brown, Jansen and Company at 32 Abchurch Lane. Sort of advertising, I suppose, in a way, because by this time, I don't think anybody was using Mulready's. This was just a reproduction. Item here, posted from Smyrna in Turkey went via Marseille to Messrs. Brown, Jansen and Company. And looking at the postmarks that are on there, we can see that it left Smyrna on the 9th of September in 1881. And the paid mark shows us that that was dated the 16th of September. So it took 7 days to get from Smyrna to London. But on the back, there is a mark. And when I enhanced it to try to see what it said, because it wasn't easy to see, I managed to find out that it said it had been struck on the 20th of September. So that meant it had been received on the 16th, but hadn't really been dispatched until the 20th. So why was there a delay? Well, I think the delay was because when you look at the address on there in the original handwriting, there was no address given. It just said Bankers, London. And I think it took them a while to look up that they were at number 32 Abchurch Lane, because that address has been added in a separate hand using different ink. Now, the item is a wrapper that contained a letter from acorn exporter John Honisher in Smyrna. He exported oaks from which tannin could be extracted for use as a tanning agent. And this was part of a large-scale export from Smyrna to leather-making countries, including Australia, Britain, Italy, Germany, Austria, and France. But of course, Brown, Jansen and Co. Bankers were listed in the post office directory. This item, which I think also was from John Honisher, again, it doesn't give the address. It just gives Brown, Jansen and Company, Bankers, London. That one was posted in July of 1880. But I think I know why it was that people didn't write Abchurch Lane in there. This item of mail sent from Brown, Jansen and Company into Germany, they used one of those penny pink envelopes, and they uprated it with 2 penny lilac stamps. On the back, it has the embossed mark of the company, and that embossed mark doesn't mention Abchurch Lane at all. It just says Brown, Jansen and Co. London. So that may explain why incoming mail didn't have their address actually on there. In the late 1880s, they changed their check printers from Rowe and Company, first of all to G.O. Irving and Company, and then to Blades, Eastern Blades. And we can see that when we look at the detail of the printing on the checks. Now, Blades, Eastern Blades, as John Higgins knows, were an important company when it came to printing the stamps for the North Borneo Company. And they were actually on the corner of King William Street and Abchurch Lane, because in the 1830s, King William Street was built, and that kind of cut Abchurch Lane in two effectively. And some of the buildings in the centre of the street were obviously demolished for that to happen. But Blades, Eastern Blades were at number 11 Abchurch Lane, just on the corner there, as you see in this photograph. However, they weren't only at number 11. They started off at number 11. So I think when they produced that bill head, bottom left there, for Blades and from Blades and East in about 1830, they would have been at number 11 Abchurch Lane around that time. Later, however, they moved their offices into number 23 Abchurch Lane. And so we can see an advert there in the upper left corner that makes that very clear. It also explains that they were printers and stationers, and the types of things that they printed, including banners and notices and envelopes and so on. And we see in the bill head here, this very nice large bill on the right-hand side. There it mentions 23 Abchurch Lane as being where their offices were, and their printing works were actually out at Leonard Street in Finsbury. And here we have some items of postal history, some items of mail from them when they were at 23 Abchurch Lane. In the upper part of the screen there, we've got a memorandum postcard from them, posted on the 20th of February, 1883. And in the lower part there, a slightly later one from January 1899. You can see how the design changed over the years. Here's another memo postcard from them. This one's posted in October of 1884. And here they were writing to they were writing to John Hudson, the bank manager in Stony Stratford for the Bucks and Oxon Union Bank Limited. And that was because they were the printers of checks for some branches of that bank in the 1880s. As well as being at number 23, they were also at number 17, Abchurch Lane. We see that, for example, with that box lid that's on the right-hand side there, when they had produced some visiting cards, and indeed manufactured and exported all sorts of things, printers. There they mentioned 17 Abchurch Lane. The specimen check that they produced there, that also mentions that they were at number 17 and 23 Abchurch Lane at one and the same time. So for a while they had offices in two buildings in Abchurch Lane. And here's some items of mail from 17 Abchurch Lane. George Roland Blades was not only a printer, he was also a Conservative politician and, for a while, Lord Mayor of London. And he had joined the family printing business in 1886, and he eventually became its chairman. And we see a couple of letters here from him in 1938. The one on the left, where he was writing to Major Harris, declining the invitation that had come from the president of the Timber Trade Federation of the United Kingdom to attend their annual dinner. Well, unfortunately, he wasn't able to attend that dinner. And the other letter there from September 1938, he was thanking someone for sending him a copy of their pamphlet about peace and practical politics. In the end, he was created a baronet in the 1922 New Year's Honours, and he was appointed Knight Grand Cross the Order of the British Empire, and he was raised to the peerage as Lord Ebersham. Mentioned 11 Abchurch Lane, where Blades, Eastern Blades, had their shop on the corner. When they moved out from there, other businesses obviously occupied that site, and one of them was the Brewers Investment Corporation Limited. And we see this item that is a prospectus that was being mailed out to people, and it mentions the secretary and the registered offices being at 11 Abchurch Lane. But the prospectus, of course, was printed by Blades, Eastern Blades at 23 Abchurch Lane. Okay, so we were just talking about 11 Abchurch Lane and 23 Abchurch Lane and Blades, Eastern Blades, and other companies at 11 Abchurch Lane. And here's an example of an item of mail that had gone from the Waihi Gold Mining Company Limited of 11 Abchurch Lane. That's what's on the flap on the back of that envelope. And as it turns out, the envelope was made by Blades, Eastern Blades at 23 Abchurch Lane. Their embossed name is on the envelope. And this had actually gone from that mining company to Professor Ludwig Edinger, who was in Germany. He was in Frankfurt. He was a leading neurophysiologist, anatomist, and psychiatrist. And as it happened, he'd married Anna Goldschmidt, and she was the daughter of Moritz Benedict Goldschmidt. And that man was the joint proprietor of the bank Moritz B. Goldschmidt in Frankfurt. So when they wrote to Ludwig Edinger, it got redirected to Moritz B. Goldschmidt at 11 Börsenstrasse in Frankfurt. But as we see, that gold mining company was one of many companies that were now in that building at number 11 Abchurch Lane. Now, we mentioned the situation with the General Post Office, the one at Lombard Street and the other one in Gerrard Street in Soho. And the way that they were referred to actually changed, but the office in the General Post Office yard in Lombard Street was still adjacent to Abchurch Lane. But we can see in this notice here how all the regulations and about these principal offices is all laid out. Now, one of the things that they got up to in Abchurch Lane, which is quite interesting, was diplomatic mail interception. Because next to the General Post Office in Lombard Street, there were a suite of offices, and they had a rather inconspicuous door located on Abchurch Lane, which the staff used to avoid observation. It consisted of 3 rooms, and one of which they never let the fires or the candles go out. It was always illuminated and lit. And the staff mainly lived on the premises, and apart from them, only the Postmaster General had the right of entry, because in these rooms, a variety of highly specialized skills were exercised. People were opening letters, they were engraving seals, they were mixing up wax, they were deciphering, because this was the place where the diplomatic mail was intercepted. It was done very skillfully, so that His Majesty's ministers often had the opportunity of reading deciphered diplomatic messages before the originals reached their destination. Recipients usually remained entirely ignorant of the fact that the seals had been broken and reset. And of course, if things were in ciphers, they had to be deciphered. But virtually no ciphers were safe from the men that were known in the Foreign Office as our post office friends. And they only abolished diplomatic interception in 1844. And this led to a marked deterioration in the success of British foreign policy. And the reason that they abolished it in 1844 is there was a political scandal involving the interception of letters of an Italian refugee, Giuseppe Mazzini. A parliamentary secret committee was convened to examine the legality of the practice, concluding that a power existed under the royal prerogative. Now, domestic interception practices continued within Britain, but the secret branch of the post office that intercepted foreign diplomatic letters was disbanded following the Mazzini scandal. This illustration on the right shows the people at work using steam to soften wax seals and taking impressions of seals and sliding thin batons with a long slit into the envelopes and twirling the letters around so they could be extracted without breaking the seals. But as I say, all of that had to stop with regard to diplomatic mail following the scandal in 1844. Here is some mail to 35 Abchurch Lane, and these were sent to the man shown there, Manuel Pedro Guimarães, who was at that address. In 1822, he'd founded a port wine company in Portugal, Fonseca Guimarães, when he purchased the majority of the Fonseca holdings. Now, he supported the liberal cause in the War of the Two Brothers in Portugal, and he fled Portugal, hidden in an empty port wine cask. He settled in England and moved into the premises at 35 Abchurch Lane in 1825. His company actually stayed in England until 1927, when they returned to Portugal. And they grew rapidly in reputation and importance. And by 1840, the firm had become the second largest shipper of port wine. So a major firm. And these two letters, one at the top was from Duarte Lessa, who was the Brazilian vice consul and a merchant dealing in port in Liverpool. And that was dated 19th December 1829. And it was received at 35 Abchurch Lane on 24th December. It had been received, obviously, at the chief office in London, and the oval date stamp was applied, making reference to 7 o'clock at night, 7, because at that time there were 6 deliveries a day in the Tuppenny Post, and this one was dealt with that 7 o'clock at night processing. The one at the bottom, also addressed to Manuel, had come in from Brussels, postmark dated 20th of April 1830, and on the reverse there was a foreign post office mark for April 22nd, 1830. The manuscript marking is a shilling and fourpence, and in red there's also a 2-line Brussels Franco mark on there. At 33 Abchurch Lane, this is in 1855, that's where merchant and navy agent John Petty Muspratt was, and this is a sort of a receipt, because he had been asked to pay £6 to W.H. Bellamy, Esquire, and it looks like he did that, and there's a receipt stamp on there to say that indeed the money had been received. So I thought that was rather nice item, featuring one of those postal fiscal stamps, the receipt 1 penny stamp. This one from 1855. 33 Abchurch Lane, like so many of the premises along that road, had different offices at different times, or there were multiple offices in them. One of the companies that was at 33 Abchurch Lane was the Agency for Public Funds for Geneva. And this item here, this postcard, was mailed to them from Liverpool on the 27th of September, 1879. And as you see, it's from a chap who lived in Everton, and he was asking about how he can send money to that company, whether he could use a post office order or by and through which bank, because this company would sell you shares, £1 a share or 6 shares for £5, and these would then be entered into prize draws as well, because this was all guaranteed by the government. So it was a way of providing public funds for Geneva, for Switzerland, but also having an opportunity to find that you're lucky enough to have your shares drawn out in the prize draws and be the recipient of anything from £20 sterling up to £25,000. And we can see that this arrangement was advertised over a number of years. And initially they were at 33 Nicholas Lane, then they were at Abchurch Lane, later they were at New Oxford Street in London. Another of the companies that was at 33 Abchurch Lane published the Investors' Guardian newspaper. That paper had been published originally by J.Y. Jackson at 27 Change Alley in Lombard Street, but they'd moved their premises to 3 Abchurch Lane for a few years around 1876, and then they came to 33 Abchurch Lane. And as it says there, that was published weekly by Thurlow Harmon Dowling, and he was working with his father, Dionysius Wilfred Dowling. Now, unfortunately, I've not got any examples of mail to or from the Investors' Guardian newspaper, but there must have been some. At 26 Abchurch Lane, there were some notaries, and this item which was a bill of exchange, was something that they dealt with in 1863 because it had been drawn on the 10th of December 1862 for payment 3 months afterwards. But unfortunately, 3 months afterwards, so in March of 1863, the company who had drawn it were bankrupt, and therefore the notaries stated that the account was closed. The bill of exchange has got an embossed revenue stamp on it, a 9p embossed stamp here, and it's very similar to the ones that we see that are very often vermilion coloured, like the one I illustrate here on the right-hand side. At 20 Abchurch Lane, it was in a block of businesses, actually 20 and 21 Abchurch Lane. There was actually quite a serious fire there in August 1909, and a block of the business premises were destroyed. But this first item here from 1888 came in from Mexico into 20 Abchurch Lane. It was addressed to the secretary and the general manager of the Western Railway Company of Mexico Limited. And we can see then, yeah, it's come in from Mexico, went via New York before it arrived, obviously, in London. Like so many of the places in Abchurch Lane, number 20 had numerous companies within it. We can see that from the post office directory there on the left. And amongst them, when we look at this item from 1914, we can see that this is addressed to Thomas Dixon at 20 Abchurch Lane. Thomas Dixon was actually the chairman of 3 of the companies at 20 Abchurch Lane: Dixon and Co., East India Merchants, the Tellock FMS Rubber Company Limited, and the Elmshurst Salon Tea and Rubber Estates Limited. But his son, Ashley Gordon Dixon, was a temporary captain in the Royal Horse Artillery. And at the end of October 1914, he was promoted to captain. And it's possible this envelope contained a letter from his son with news of his pending promotion, because this was sent to the Advanced Base Post Office on the 12th of October 1914. And it was passed by the censor, Captain Ian MacDonald Henderson. He obviously checked it over, signed on the front cover. Another of the firms at 20 Abchurch Lane was the Goldfields of Victoria Limited. You see a letter here from them to solicitors in Preston. And that letter was signed by William Harcott Bustard, the company's secretary. The company had some stamped addressed envelopes prepared to the secretary of the Goldfields of Victoria Limited, so they could be mailed out to people, and then of course people could write back to them using those envelopes. Twenty Abchurch Lane was also, in the 1970s, the premises for the British Bank of the Middle East. And this airmail envelope was sent from the Nicosia branch of the Cyprus Popular Bank Limited to 20 Abchurch Lane on the 13th of December 1972. The British Bank of the Middle East, as its name suggests, covered the Middle East, and this large registered envelope was sent to that bank at 20 Abchurch Lane from the Taiz branch of that bank in the Yemen Arab Republic. And although I can't make out the date on the postmarks, the stamps featuring ploughing had been issued in 1967, and the stamps marking the 9th anniversary of the Yemen Revolution were issued on 29th of February 1972. So we know the envelope was post date end of Feb 1972. certainly it's a nice large envelope, and I must acknowledge Tim Harrison at this point because he owns this envelope and he shared the image with me because he knew I was interested in mail into Abchurch Lane. It's another large envelope which Tim owns as well, also to the British Bank of the Middle East at 20 Abchurch Lane. And this one, it is clear from the postmarks that it was posted on the 7th of January 1973. Again, large envelope. I've had to reduce it to fit the screen. It's the actual size is 12 inches wide by 10 inches high. Now, the British Bank of the Middle East, they had the lease on the premises there in London, and that their interest in that in 19 through 22 Abchurch Lane was actually sold in 1978. And the new owners were able to carry out an office development. And as you see, they produced a very fine looking building with very fine rubbed red brick and stone dressings and Doric columns and a polished purple granite ground floor. So very attractive looking building that was there on that side of the road. Another of the banks that had a long association with Abchurch Lane was Ottoman Bank. They were at 20 to 22 Abchurch Lane from 1948 to 1959, and then at 18 to 22 Abchurch Lane for another 10 years, 1959 through 1969. And so here's an item of mail that had gone from Amman in Jordan to the head office of the Ottoman Bank at 20 to 22 Abchurch Lane. Again, this is an envelope that Tim Harrison owns. He very kindly shared images with me. And we can see that if we look at the picture on the left-hand side, that the Ottoman Bank actually obviously had their name on that building facade. This one's from my collection, an item of mail into the Ottoman Bank at 18 to 22 Abchurch Lane in December 1966. Yeah, postmark on the back is from Beirut. Now, we've heard about banks and printers and so on. Rather unusual company, in my opinion, that had offices in London at 25 Abchurch Lane was the London office of Zoedone, a non-alcoholic facsimile of champagne, basically a sparkling phosphate iron beverage. Now, this was made by the company in Wrexham, but they had offices in London. And apparently it was the king of non-alcoholic beverages, if you believe their advertising. But at 25 Abchurch Lane as well, for a long time, was a company called the London Directory Company Limited. And the item there with the halfpenny orange stamp, reprinted, it bears a faint strike in red, actually, of a circular date stamp dated 4th of September 1900. As you see, that's basically a prepaid item of postal stationery that they would use, that people could then mail it back to them. The illustration on the right dates from 1884 and shows us what the building looked like at that time. The firm itself had been established in 1814, so they were a long-established firm. And they would send out letters, of course, to potential advertisers and people that wanted to be listed in the directories that they were producing. They produced an annual directory. And here we see a letter from them to brandy distillers in Cognac, because they were in the process of preparing the copy of the 1912 edition. Of course, they were writing to them in September 1911, asking whether they would wish to be included in the section of about brandy distillers. On the left, we can see a leaflet they used to promote their directories. But of course, they were writing to people in other countries as well. So they also wrote in French. Here's a couple of examples of letters that they wrote in 1922 to firms in France. Now, of course, this was between the wars. This was not long after the First World War. And they were writing about the fact that in view of the imminent resumption of business relations throughout the world, it was most important that a French company wishing to do business overseas should be shown in a proper manner in the foreign commerce section of the London Directory. So they were encouraging these cognac producers and so on to advertise within their directory. And actually, there were adverts for William Wilson and Sons and the London Directory published throughout the British Empire, including, as I've mentioned there, India, Canada, Newfoundland, Australia, and Bermuda. And here's another of their letters where they were writing to France in May of 1925. And there's also a leaflet in French as well. But here is an item of mail to them from British Guiana. This was in 1940. And see, it's a rather nice registered item with the 10-cent, yes, a 10-cent rate, including the registration fee of 6 cents to get that to them from British Guiana. Card here to Imperial Ottoman Bank in Jerusalem from the Imperial Bank of Persia that were at 25 Abchurch Lane for a while as well. Particular card there has got has been signed by the manager, George Newell, and he was writing there acknowledging receipt of a letter from the Imperial Ottoman Bank in Jerusalem. Now, the director of the Imperial Bank of Persia in 1917, Hugh Shakespeare Barnes, wrote to Lord Curzon about the railways in Persia, and this letter is actually at the British Library. Example of mail from that bank. "25 Abchurch Lane was also where the head office of Kemp's mercantile offices was situated. And we see examples here of mail from them from 1949, 1951, and 1955. They published a mercantile gazette every week, starting in 1866. So they've been doing it a nice long time. And they weren't in London the whole time, but certainly for a few years they had offices at 25 Abchurch Lane. And these letters, obviously, they were writing to Newark Boiler Works and so on. But in the 1960s, they moved from 25 Abchurch Lane to premises in Manchester, and obviously they advertised for staff to work in that city, as we see in the advertisement on the left there that was published in the Manchester Evening News in February of 1961. In the 1960s, the Scotsman newspaper in particular carried advertisements for young bankers to work for American Express, which had its London city office at 25 Abchurch Lane. So Amex were there in the 60s. Looking to the other side of the lane, number 13 Abchurch Lane, and looking back to the 1760s, watchmaker Robert Fleetwood was recorded at 2 addresses, one of which was 13 Abchurch Lane in 1766. And we see on the lower left there, rather nicely done watch paper with his details on, and also a very fine quality London silver escapement watch in silver, in a silver pair cases, and that's signed Robert Fleetwood, Abchurch Lane, London. The hallmarks for 1797 means that those cases were actually made about 3 years after Robert Fleetwood had died in 1794. At 14 Abchurch Lane, so next door to number 13, from the period 1772 to 1776, this is an unissued cheque from clearing bankers Lemon, Buller, Furley, Lubbock and Co., who were at number 14 Abchurch Lane. Now looking at 13 and 14 together, because the dividing wall between the two seemed to be removed at some point, and companies were able to occupy entire floors in both 13 and 14 Abchurch Lane. And this item here is a scrip certificate for a fully paid land warrant from the California Mexico Land Company Limited. And they were at 13 and 14 Abchurch Lane. Now, they were founded in London in May 1888, and they had more than 2 million hectares of land in the Mexican province of Baja, that is to say, Lower California. And so the idea was that you could buy, you could take out a subscription for land warrants, so much of that land at various prices shown there in the advert. And when the company was liquidated in 1934, shareholders received virtually nothing, though bondholders received 2,500 pesos in Mexican internal bonds per £50 that had been advanced to the company. I think that's because, in fairness, the Baja California consists mainly of deserts and mountains of little commercial value. I think that was a bit of an issue, really. Now, the chairman, Henry Bickerton Greenwood, wrote to the curator of the Royal Botanic Gardens in Kew in April of 1893, obviously using his letter-headed stationery, mentioning 13 and 14 Abchurch Lane there. I actually had a look at a map of the Lower Territory of Lower California to see what lands were conceded by the government of Mexico to the California Mexico Land Company Limited, and we can see the areas on that map, very much out in the countryside, mountainous areas. One of the other firms that was at 13 and 14 Abchurch Lane was the Kastner Kellner Alkali Company Limited. And here we see an item of mail to them, to their secretary, Percy Court. This item was from a company in Manchester. They've only identified themselves as HC and Son on the back of their envelope, so I'm not sure who the firm was, but we can see that it was mailed at the Royal Exchange in Manchester, registered letter with a registered fee of twopence. So that's a nice incoming item there into 13 and 14 Abchurch Lane, their registered mail. One of the other firms that was at 13 and 14 Abchurch Lane was an insurance company, Harold Townend Limited. insurance brokers. And although I've not got an item of mail from them, we can see that they must have had quite a few inquiry forms sent to them, because there's a inquiry form that you could fill out, asking for a proposal form for insuring your cycle car, which is the type of small lightweight car. They also provided insurance for flight accidents to pilots, and motor car insurance in the general sense as well, as we see on these adverts. And I think their adverts are great. I mean, that one, very eye-catching, explains the various premiums for the various types of car. At 22 Abchurch Lane, there was a Bank of Montreal were there. We see here a letter to solicitors in Wimbledon in Norfolk in 1899. And the envelope on the right there was from the Bank of Montreal in June 1902 to a banking business in Berlin. And on the back of the envelope, that has their oval stamp, their 22 Abchurch Lane, Bank of Montreal, London. And that letter, of course, on the left there was signed by the manager at the Bank of Montreal at Abchurch Lane, which was Alexander Lang. Here we've got an envelope that was sent from Montreal, Canada in 1897 to someone care of the Bank of Montreal at Abchurch Lane. But the mail, which had come via New York, was actually redirected to a hotel in Switzerland. So the person obviously wasn't at the bank anymore. Now, pretty obviously, there was times when the Bank of Montreal at 22 Abchurch Lane needed to write to the Bank of Montreal in Canada. And here's an example of mail from them addressed to the Bank of Montreal in St. Mary's, Ontario, that was carried on the SS Germanic, London postmark there, 30th of July, 1902. The penny postage stamp is on there, but they've also added a penny late fee because it was obviously late in terms of the getting the mails in the post, because they wanted to ensure that the letter reached the steamer from Liverpool in time. And on the back, there is a St. Mary's receiving mark dated 9th of August, 1902, and a red Bank of Montreal seal partially concealing the embossed oval stamp of 22 Abchurch Lane, Bank of Montreal, London. Here's a few more items, outgoing mail from the Bank of Montreal at 22 Abchurch Lane, all of these going into New York in September and October 1902, carried on various ships. As we see, the clerk wrote on there which of the steamships the mail should be carried on. And each of them have been uprated through the addition of 4p postage to pay the 5p second weight step. And all of them, of course, have the oval stamp on the back. Now, there is a picture of 22 Abchurch Lane, and clearly that shows the Italian bank Credito Italiano. Now, they opened their London office there in 1911, and here on the right is a registered letter to them from Belgium, received on the 3rd of October 1912. And once they opened their London office in 1911, they used privately printed folded postal stationery cards to send details of the bankable papers that they would buy or sell. And these were mailed to financial institutions all over Europe, basically. I mean, I've got examples there to Amsterdam, Antwerp, Basel, Bern, Frankfurt, and they were all cancelled in London by the foreign section. So you always get this sort of FS cancellation, um, or indeed uh, the one at the top there, London FS. So these turn up fairly frequently, actually, these little cards. This one, they were actually writing to another bank in London, in this case, the Bank of Australia, a letter between the two banks there. And here they're writing to a bank in Sofia, Bulgaria, using postal stationery printed with their name and address. So yeah, that is on the back. And of course, they used a franking machine. This was mailed in December 1923. The first type of postage meter marks appeared in 1922. So Credito Italiano had Great Britain franking machine number 3. They were quite an early adopter of these franking machines from Universal Postal Frankers Limited. And we can see how the style of mark had evolved, and it continued to evolve. You know, they changed it as time went on. And this particular example, they were writing to a company in Bermondsey in March 1924. Again, though, with their imprint on the back of the envelope. And here they were writing to a company in Hamburg, and they applied a wax seal. Also, they used stamps with the CI perfin, so the Credito Italiano. This has got that on there as well. So this has gone from Abchurch Lane out to Hamburg. 22 Abchurch Lane was also where Perkins Bacon Limited were for a while. This is their letterhead dating from 1939, and they were the successors to Perkins Bacon, who printed the penny black and the tuppenny blue. Now, they actually printed the souvenir sheets for the 1940 Stamp Centenary Exhibition. That's why it says Perkins Bacon Limited London EC4 on those sheets. So they were there. Amongst the firm's directors was A. John Hubbard, who was later the president of the Royal Philatelic Society, London. '20 to 22 Abchurch Lane clearly has been involved with printers for a while. Here's another company that were there. This was W. Sprague and Company Limited. This envelope mailed to them from Cyprus in September 1945. They were banknote engravers and bankers' chemical check printers. Their premises had previously been in Sherborne Lane, and later they were at City Road. And amongst their customers were Messrs. Jarvis and Jarvis, bankers of King's Lynn. And we see here a check from 3rd of November 1888 that was printed by that company for that bank in King's Lynn. A couple of items mailed, I think, during World War I to J. Hubbard at W. Sprague and Company Limited at 20 Abchurch Lane, including one there which has a strike of the NAFI emblem on the flap. Both of these, of course, would have been censored at the time. And a personal letter to J. Hubbard, again at Sprague and Company at Abchurch Lane, Post Office, Maritime Mail. And no look at Abchurch Lane would be complete without a reference to 15 Abchurch Lane, which is currently the premises of the Royal Theatre Society London. Now, of course, originally it was a house. And if we look at the advert from 1809, premises are truly convenient, contain 6 bed chambers, commodious drawing and dining rooms, excellent office and convenient domestic apartments. So that's how it was. It was a dwelling house and an office. Those premises were demolished and the site was redeveloped, and new premises were built for the Gresham Club, who moved there in August 1915. There's a couple of adverts there for when the Gresham Club was looking to recruit part-time waitresses and an account clerk typist. Then the London Capital Club had the premises, and then the Royal moved its premises to 15 Abchurch Lane in September 2019. And here we see an item of mail sent to the Royal at that address in June of 2022. Now, the Royal's patron, Her Majesty the Queen, officially opened the building in November 2019. 2022 marked Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee, which is referenced there in the slogan postmark. But unfortunately, Her Majesty died 3 months after this envelope was posted. The Royal also has a meter franking machine that also mentions 15 Abchurch Lane, as we see in the example there at the bottom. Sometimes mistakes happen. The experts at the Royal FRPSL Limited, they sent this letter to Stanley Gibbons. Unfortunately, they put a 2p stamp on it instead of a second-class stamp. However, it still got there. The mistake went unnoticed at the Mount Pleasant sorting office. So in May of 2023, that managed to go from the Royal to Stanley Gibbons for tuppence. Here's an item of mail inbound to the Royal from Canada. I chose this one because it's just got a great selection of stamps in it, stamps totaling $3.88, the international letter post rate, because Eastern Auctions were mailing the Royal its latest stamp auction catalogue at the time. And this one from this March 24, somebody had reused a commemorative envelope that was franked and cancelled with an illustrated hand stamp back in May of 2019. They'd reused it and added 3 more Slovenian stamps on it to mail it to the Royal. I thought that was an unusual item of mail inbound to the Royal. So, Abchurch Lane. We've looked at all of those premises. As you see, that is the majority of them. We've seen how the buildings on Abchurch Lane have changed over the decades, and so the addresses have also changed. And that completes my look at Abchurch Lane. I hope you found it interesting. We've looked at lots of businesses and organisations that have been there, and that obviously shows us where it is within the City of London. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation.